want you off this property immediately. You have no right to be here. I don't care what that card says.
The officers seem to disagree.
You know, there's a very specific sound that a suburban dream makes. When it shatters, it sounds exactly like a woman in a pastel pink tracksuit screaming into an iPhone while pointing a manicured finger at your wife, accusing her of federal crimes on her very first day home in 2 years. I wish I was exaggerating. I wish I was setting the scene for some kind of low-budget sitcom. But this was my life, standing on a driveway in a neighborhood called Whispering Pines, watching the red and blue lights of 3 police cruisers bounce off the vinyl siding of my brand new Colonial. The woman screaming was Linda Thorne, the HOA president, a woman who wielded her clipboard like a medieval broadsword. And the person she was trying to have arrested was my wife, Sarah. What Linda didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known, because she was too busy listening to the sound of her own authority, was that she wasn't picking a fight with a regular neighbor. She was picking a fight with a highly decorated Air Force colonel who specializes in logistics and dismantling hostile infrastructures. And let me tell you, watching Linda realize she had just declared war on the wrong person was the single most terrifying and satisfying moment of my entire existence. But before we get to the flashing lights and the look of absolute horror on Linda's face, we have to rewind, because you have to understand the context of how a quiet accountant like me ended up in the middle of a suburban battlefield. My name is Tom, and for the last 730 days, my marriage had existed entirely inside a 6-inch phone screen, pixelated faces and choppy audio, telling each other I love you over a lag while Sarah was deployed in a sandbox halfway across the world. When you're a military spouse, you live with this low humming anxiety, this constant knot in your stomach that never really goes away until they are standing on American soil again. So when I got the news that she was rotating home for good, taking a command post at the nearby base, I went a little crazy. I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted a sanctuary. So I bought the house in Whispering Pines, a 2-story beauty with a wraparound porch and an oak tree out front, thinking this would be our fresh start, our quiet place. I spent a month prepping it, scrubbing floors until my knees bruised, planting hydrangeas because those are her favorite, and dodging the neighborhood gaze. I knew about Linda Thorne before I ever officially met her. She was the kind of neighbor whose reputation arrives before she does, like a storm front. She lived 3 doors down in a house that was so perfectly manicured it looked like a rendering, not a home. Linda was the self-appointed sheriff of the cul-de-sac, the woman who walked her poodle at 6 a.m. not for exercise, but for surveillance. I'd seen her measuring people's grass with a literal ruler. I'd seen her digging through recycling bins to check for non-compliant plastics, and I'd seen the way grown men would practically dive into their bushes to avoid making eye contact with her. I thought if I kept my head down, paid my dues, and kept my trash cans invisible, we'd be fine. I was an idiot. The day Sarah came home was supposed to be a movie moment. The sun was shining, the air was crisp, and I was vibrating with nerves, pacing the driveway, waiting. And then I heard it, not a taxi, not an Uber, but the deep, bone-rattling growl of a diesel engine that sounded like it was chewing on gravel. I looked down the street and saw a massive, surplus LMTV, a light medium tactical vehicle, turning onto our quiet suburban street, painted in drab olive green, looking absolutely monstrous next to the Priuses and minivans. Sarah had borrowed it from a buddy in transport to haul her heavy gear and crates back from the depot. It was loud, it was aggressive, and it was beautiful because the driver's door popped open and there she was. Sarah is 5'9" of pure capability, wearing her fatigues, hair pulled back in that severe, perfect bun, moving with the kind of efficiency that makes you feel lazy just watching her. She jumped down from the cab, her combat boots hitting the asphalt with a solid thud, and for a second, nothing else mattered. I ran to her, we hugged, and the last 2 years of loneliness just evaporated. But the universe doesn't let you have moments like that for free, because before we could even get the first box off the truck, I heard the slam of a screen door that sounded like a gunshot. Linda Thorne was marching down the sidewalk, and she wasn't walking, she was advancing on a target. She was wearing that pink tracksuit and holding her phone up like a shield, recording us. She stopped exactly 1 inch from the edge of my driveway. Her face twisted into a mask of righteous indignation. "Excuse me," she barked, her voice cutting through the air like a rusty saw. "Excuse me. I am Linda Thorne, president of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association, Compliance Division. What in God's name do you think you are doing?" I tried to step in. I put on my best nice neighbor face and said, "Hi Linda, this is my wife Sarah. She just got home from deployment. We're just unloading. The truck will be gone in an hour." Linda didn't even look at me. She was staring at Sarah with a look of pure, unfiltered disgust, scanning the uniform, the boots, the truck, like she was looking at a pile of garbage. "I don't care who she is," Linda sneered. Section 9. Article 3 prohibits commercial or industrial vehicles over 2 tons from street parking for any duration. This monstrosity is an eyesore. It's dragging down property values just sitting here, and frankly, it's aggressive. Sarah paused, holding a heavy crate of books. She didn't get angry. She didn't raise her voice. She just turned her head slowly and looked at Linda with the kind of calm detachment she used her reserve for analyzing supply chain disruptions in war zones. "Ma'am," Sarah said, her voice level, "it's a temporary load-in. We'll be done in 45 minutes. That was the wrong thing to say because Linda didn't want compliance. She wanted submission. She puffed up her chest, stepping closer. "Don't you take that tone with me. I checked the resident registry, Tom. You are listed as single occupancy. There is no military personnel registered at this address. So, as far as I'm concerned, this little costume party is suspicious activity. In fact," and here she smiled, a cruel, thin little smile, "I think it's stolen valor. You're playing dress up to intimidate the neighborhood." My jaw hit the floor. "Stolen valor? Linda, are you insane? She's been in the Middle East for 2 years. Likely story," Linda scoffed, already dialing 911. "I know a fraud when I see one. I've run this neighborhood for 15 years. I've evicted families for less than this. You think you can just roll in here with your tank and scare us? I am the authority here." She put the phone on speaker, holding it out so we could hear her shrieking to the dispatcher about suspicious militants and threatening behavior and illegal vehicles. Sarah didn't stop her. Sarah just set the box down, leaned against the massive tire of the truck, and crossed her arms. She looked at me and winked. "Let her call, Tom. Never interrupt an enemy when they are making a mistake." 20 minutes later, the circus arrived. Chief Miller pulled up, a seasoned guy with gray hair and a tired face, followed by 2 other cruisers. Linda practically sprinted to them, vibrating with excitement. "Officer, thank God. These people are aggressive. She's impersonating a soldier. That vehicle is a threat to the children. Arrest her." Chief Miller walked up the driveway, his hand resting on his belt, looking from the truck to Linda to Sarah. He looked tired of neighborhood disputes, tired of Linda Thorne. "Ma'am," he said to Sarah, ignoring Linda for a second, "we got a report of a disturbance. Is this your vehicle?" "Temporary transport for gear, Chief," Sarah said calmly. "Just getting my kid inside. Make her prove it." Linda screamed from the sidewalk. "Check her ID. She's a fraud. She's endangering us all." Chief Miller sighed and looked at Sarah. "Ma'am, just to clear this up, do you have identification?" This was it. This was the moment. Sarah reached into her back pocket, slow and deliberate. She pulled out her wallet and extracted her CACR common access card and handed it to Miller. He took it, looked at it, and then stopped. He looked closer. Then he looked at Sarah, really looked at her, noticing the rank insignia on her collar, the specific patches on her shoulder that you can't buy at a surplus store. Chief Miller's entire body language changed. He straightened his spine, snapped his heels together, and delivered a crisp, perfect salute. "Colonel," he said, his voice dropping an octave into pure respect. "My apologies, ma'am. I didn't realize who we had moving in." "Welcome home." Linda stopped breathing. I actually heard the little gasp choke in her throat. She was waiting for the handcuffs, waiting for the takedown, and instead, she was watching the chief of police salute the woman she had just called a fraud. "As you were." "Chief," Sarah said, returning the salute with a casual grace. "No harm done. But my neighbor here seems very confused about the laws regarding active duty transport and private property rights. Chief Miller turned to Linda, and the warmth was gone from his face. Mrs. Thorne, I thought it was over. I thought Linda would lick her wounds and leave us alone. I was naive. What I didn't realize is that people like Linda don't stop. They just change tactics. She couldn't call the cops anymore, so she went to her other arsenal, the bureaucracy. For 3 days, it was quiet. We unpacked, we drank wine on the porch, we tried to be normal. But on the 4th day, the paper war began. I came home from work to find our front door plastered with neon orange notices. Violation 1, excessive noise 6 a.m. Fine, $100. That was Sarah going for a jog. Violation 2, unauthorized vehicle placement. Fine, $50. My tire was touching the curb. Violation 3, unapproved facade decoration. Fine, $75. The welcome home banner. Violation 4, landscaping non-compliance. Fine, $150. Our hedges were apparently 1.5 inches over regulation. It didn't stop. Every day, new fines. Improper trash can placement $50. Unauthorized bird feeder $25. Light pollution from our porch light $75. In 1 week, she hit us with $800 in fines. She was watching us. I'd wake up at 2 a.m. to get a glass of water and see a flashbulb pop outside. It was Linda, documenting our windows, looking for reasons to write a ticket. She started a neighborhood email newsletter blocking us from it. Of course, claiming that Sarah was unstable, that she had severe PTSD, that we were hoarding weapons. She poisoned the well. Neighbors I hadn't even met would cross the street to avoid us. I was breaking. I'm an accountant. I deal in spreadsheets, not psychological warfare. I sat at the kitchen table with a stack of violation notices, head in my hands. Sarah, maybe we should just sell, I whispered. It's not worth it. She's going to bleed us dry. She controls the board. She controls the rules. Sarah was polishing her boots at the counter. She stopped. She looked at me, and her eyes were hard, not angry at me, but focused. Tom, she said, I have negotiated logistics through hostile territories. I have managed supply lines under fire. I am not going to be run out of my own house by a woman in a velour tracksuit with a clipboard. But what can we do? I asked. She's the president. Sarah stood up. We do what we do in the field. We gather intel. We find the weakness. And then we dismantle the infrastructure. She opened her laptop. She wants to play surveillance state? Fine. Operation Glasshouse is a go. For the next 10 days, Sarah went dark. She became a ghost. She used skills I didn't even know she had. She tracked Linda's schedule. She set up cameras pointing at the public street. She started digging into public records. She noticed things I missed. She noticed that Linda drove a brand new Lexus on a retiree's income. She noticed that the landscaping crew that did the community parks was always the same truck, but they never seemed to do much work. One night, Sarah called me over to the laptop. Look at this, she said, pointing to a spreadsheet. I pulled the HOA financials. They're technically public for residents, but nobody ever looks. The HOA pays Greenleaf Landscaping $60,000 a year for common area maintenance. Okay, I said. Landscaping is expensive. Tom, Sarah grinned, a wolfish smile. Greenleaf Landscaping is registered to a PO box. I ran the business license. The owner is a Gary Thorne, Linda's husband. Linda's husband, Sarah nodded. And look at the fines. When you pay a fine, it's supposed to go into the community reserve fund for repairs. But these fines, they're being deposited into a separate administrative processing account. Guess who is the sole signature authority on that account? Linda. She's not just a bully, Tom, Sarah whispered. She's an embezzler. She's finding the neighborhood to pay for her Lexus. We have to go to the police, I said. Standing up, no. Sarah pulled me back down. Not yet. The police take too long. We need to destroy her credibility. We need to do it in front of her army. We need a public execution of her career. The opportunity came 3 days later. Linda, feeling confident and probably realizing we weren't paying the fines, called an emergency town hall meeting. The agenda was simple: a vote to place a lien on our property and begin legal eviction proceedings for hostile environment. and chronic non-compliance. She was going for the kill shot. We walked into the community center at 7 p.m. The room was packed, 30 or 40 neighbors, all sitting in folding chairs, looking at us like we were criminals. Linda stood at the front, next to a projector screen, looking triumphant. She had charts. She had photos of our violations. She looked like a prosecutor closing a murder case. These people, Linda declaimed, pointing a laser pointer at us in the back row, are a cancer on Whispering Pines. They think because she wears a uniform, they are above the law. They intimidate. They harass. I have lived here for 15 years, and I have never felt so unsafe. They refuse to pay their fines. They refuse to follow the rules. She paused for dramatic effect, tears welling up in her eyes, fake tears. I move that we authorize the board to file a lien on 120 for Oak Creek Lane to recover the damages to our community. A few of her cronies nodded. The tension in the room was suffocating. I felt sick. Then Sarah stood up. She didn't shout. She didn't look angry. She just projected her voice, that command tone that can cut through a gale force wind. Madam President, Sarah said, before you vote to take my home, I would like to exercise my right under the bylaws to present a 5-minute rebuttal. Linda sneered. She thought she had one. Fine, make it quick. Then we vote you out. Sarah walked to the front of the room. She didn't have poster boards. She just had a small USB drive. She walked past Linda, plugged it into the laptop connected to the projector, and looked at the crowd. You accuse us of violating community standards, Sarah said to the room. But standards must be applied equally to be legal. Let's look at the data. She clicked a button. The screen behind her flickered and changed. The screen behind her flickered and changed, and suddenly, Linda's face wasn't smug anymore. It was projected 10 feet tall and grainy, high-contrast night vision. The video played in silence, but the image was unmistakable. It was 3:45 a.m. The timestamp was visible in the corner. There was Linda, in her robe, dragging to heavy black trash bags across the street and dumping them directly into the recycling bin of the Millers, the elderly couple down the block. Sarah's voice cut through the gasp that rippled through the room. Violation, illegal dumping and contamination of recycling. Fine, $100. She clicked the remote. The image changed. Now it was a photo, crisp and clear, of Linda's pristine Lexus parked squarely in front of the community fire hydrant, blocking it completely while she unloaded groceries. Violation, parking in a designated emergency zone. Safety hazard. Fine, $250, Sarah narrated coldly. Linda was starting to sputter, her face turning a mottled purple. This is doctored. This is an invasion of privacy. You can't. I'm not done, Sarah said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. Let's talk about landscaping. Click. A video played. It was Gary, Linda's husband, riding a large, industrial John Deere mower. He wasn't mowing the community park. He was mowing their own private backyard. Misuse of community assets for personal gain, Sarah said. But that's small potatoes. Let's talk about greenleaf landscaping. She pulled up a spreadsheet. It was complex, but Sarah had highlighted the relevant parts in neon yellow. The HOA pays greenleaf landscaping $5,000 a month. I ran the corporate registration. Greenleaf is owned by Gary Thorne. The contract was never put up for bid. It was signed solely by Linda Thorne. The room wasn't quiet anymore. People were standing up. Murmurs were turning into shouts. Wait a minute, a guy in the second row yelled. My brother-in-law owns a landscaping company. He offered to do the park for half that. And Linda told me there was no budget. There's budget, Sarah said, clicking to the final slide. It was a bank statement. This is the administrative processing account where your fines go. Mrs. Thorne has issued over $1,200 in fines to us in 2 weeks. In that same period, she issued 0 fines to anyone else. However, over the last fiscal year, she has collected nearly $40. 0 in fines from this neighborhood. That money is supposed to go to the reserve fund. Sarah pointed to the screen. The balance on the reserve fund was for $100. The balance on the administrative account was $38,000. And There were monthly transfers out of it to an account labeled L. Thorne. Personal. She's stealing it, Sarah said, looking directly at the neighbors. She's finding reasons to fine you. Your fence is too high. Your trash is too early. Your dog is too loud so she can pay for her car and her vacations. We are not the cancer in this neighborhood. She is. The explosion was immediate. It was like watching a dam break. 12 years of repressed anger, 12 years of people being bullied, measured, and fined. All came pouring out at once. You fined me $100 for my daughter's chalk drawings. A woman screamed, advancing on the podium. You put that in your pocket? You put a lien on the Hendersons. Another man shouted. They lost their house because of you. Linda was backing away, holding her hands up, looking like a cornered rat. There's an explanation. It's a holding account. I was keeping it safe. You don't understand the stress I'm under. Sarah stepped back, unplugged her USB drive, and looked at the other board members sitting behind Linda. They looked terrified. They knew that if they didn't act now, they were going down as accomplices, I suggest. Sarah said to the vice president, a sweaty guy named Bob, that the board calls for an immediate vote of no confidence, and perhaps a forensic audit. Bob didn't hesitate. He stood up. I move to remove Linda Thorne as president effective immediately and freeze all HOA assets. Pending investigation. Seconded. Shouted half the room. All in favor? Every hand went up. Even Gary, Linda's husband, looked like he wanted to raise his hand just to avoid the mob. Linda stood there, stripped of her title, stripped of her power, standing in the ruins of her little kingdom. She looked at Sarah, hatred burning in her eyes, tears streaming down her face, real tears this time. You ruined everything, she hissed. I built this community. I kept the property values up. You interloper, you didn't build it, Sarah said, leaning in close so only Linda could hear. You occupied it, and your occupation is over. Dismissed. Linda stormed out of the community center. But as she passed us, I heard her frantic whispering into her phone. I need to report corruption. No, they're lying. I need to speak to the city manager. No, I'm the victim. She sounded small. She sounded delusional. But karma? Karma loves a sequel. 2 weeks later, the neighborhood was transformed. The orange notices disappeared. People were actually outside, talking to each other. The fines were being refunded as the audit clawed back the money from Linda's frozen accounts. She was facing felony embezzlement charges and was currently out on bail, hiding in her house with the blinds drawn. But the final twist, the thing that really makes me believe there is a God, with a sense of humor, happened on a Sunday afternoon at the house next door to Linda, the one where she had successfully evicted the previous owners for chronic non-compliance. Had sold. We saw the moving truck pull up. We stood on our porch, drinking coffee, watching to see who the poor soul would be. A young woman hopped out. She was bubbly, friendly, maybe 23 years old. Her name was Emily. She had a little rescue dog. She went right over to Linda's house. Linda was peeking through the blinds and knocked on the door to introduce herself. We saw Linda open the door, just a crack. We saw Linda point at Emily's flower pots, already lecturing her, probably trying to claw back some sense of control, trying to bully the new girl. Emily just smiled, nodded, and typed something into her phone. A week later, we were in the garden. We heard Emily in her backyard, talking on the phone on speaker. It was loud enough to carry over the fence. Yeah, Dad, the house is great, Emily said. But the neighbor? Yeah, Mrs. Thorne, she's exactly like you said. A deep, familiar male voice rumbled back through the phone. Is she harassing you, Em? Yeah, she left 3 notes today. She's taking pictures of the dog, okay, the voice said. Keep documenting it, honey. I need a comprehensive file on her behavioral patterns. If she violates the restraining order or the bail conditions, we revoke her bond. I froze. I knew that voice. Thanks, Dad, Emily said. Love you, Chief. Love you too, sweetie. See you Sunday for dinner. Sarah and I looked at each other and burst out laughing. Emily wasn't just a neighbor. Emily was Emily Miller, Chief Miller's daughter. The chief of police had moved his own daughter in next door to the woman he had warned. Emily was a walking, talking surveillance operation sanctioned by the head of local law enforcement. I looked over at Linda's window. The curtains twitched. She had heard it too. I saw her face in the gap of the drapes. The blood had drained out of her skin. She looked like she had seen a ghost. She realized, in that moment, that she was trapped. She couldn't bully Emily. She couldn't call the cops on Emily. She was living next door to the one person who could legally destroy her. If she stepped one toe out of line. Emily looked up at Linda's window, waved and smiled. It was a sweet smile, but there was steel behind it. Beautiful day for a neighborhood watch, isn't it, Mrs. Thorne? She called out. Linda closed the curtains. We haven't seen her since. The neighborhood had a block party last weekend. Everyone was there. Sarah was manning the grill, telling war stories to a rapt audience. The fear is gone. The silence is gone. Oak Creek Lane is actually a home now. I looked at Sarah across the barbecue smoke. You know, I said, handing her a beer. I think I like this neighborhood now. She grinned, flipping a burger with military precision. Mission accomplished, soldier. So, let that be a lesson to all the tyrants with clipboards out there. You can have all the bylaws in the world. You can have the loudest voice in the cul-de-sac. But you never really know who you're screaming at. You never know if the quiet accountant's wife is a colonel who eats conflict for breakfast. And you certainly never know if the new girl next door is the police chief's daughter. Power isn't about being loud. It's about knowing when you've lost. What do you guys think? Did Linda get off too easy with just a criminal record and a lifetime of paranoia? Or is living in a prison of her own making, right next door to the police, the ultimate punishment? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've got a nightmare neighbor story, share it. We read them all. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice served cold. Stay safe out there and watch your six.